My brothers and sisters, we are living in a time when truth is being tested, when the foundations of democracy are being shaken, and when the very way we conduct ourselves as a nation is being challenged at its core. We are facing a moment that is bigger than one man, one party, or one election. It is about the integrity of the process itself. It is about whether the voice of the people will remain pure, untainted, and clear, or whether it will be manipulated, diluted, and distorted by systems that open the door for compromise. Now, I need you to hear me today, because we are standing on the edge of a decision that will shape the future. There are those who would say mail-in-voting is a convenience. They say it is a way to expand access, to give more people an opportunity to participate. And on the surface, that sounds compassionate, it sounds practical, it sounds reasonable, but convenience cannot come at the cost of credibility. Accessibility cannot override accountability. Because if the system is not trusted, if the system is not guarded, if the system is not protected, then the system is already compromised. And when the system is compromised, then the results are compromised. And when the results are compromised, then the people lose confidence in the voice of the ballot, and the democracy begins to crumble under the weight of doubt. Do you know why justice in a courtroom is so powerful? Because the people believe in the process. They may not like the verdict. They may not agree with the ruling. But if they can trust the process, they will accept the outcome. But if the process looks shady, if the process seems manipulated, if the process smells of corruption, then the people will no longer accept the results. And when the people stop trusting the verdict, the courtroom ceases to be a place of justice. The same principle applies to elections. Without trust in the process, there can be no trust in the outcome. And without trust in the outcome, the system of government itself begins to lose legitimacy. That is why we must deal with this issue of mail-in-voting. Because mail-in-voting, as it has been expanded and abused, opens the door for mistrust. It opens the door for ballots that are not verified, signatures that are not confirmed, identities that are not authenticated. It opens the door for ballots harvested in bundles, for ballots that arrive late, for ballots that mysteriously appear when the numbers don't seem to line up. It opens the door for manipulation behind closed doors where no one is watching. And once that door is open, it is hard to shut it again. Now, let me remind you, elections are not just about ballots, they are about stewardship. When you cast a vote, you are exercising stewardship over the future of a nation. You are putting your hands on the wheel of history, and stewardship demands accountability. If you have a bank account and there are no checks and balances on who can deposit or withdraw, if there is no verification of identity, if there is no security on the process, then that account cannot be trusted. In the same way, if there is no accountability in how ballots are received, verified, and counted, then the election cannot be trusted. Some will argue, but we need mail-in-voting for those who cannot physically get to the polls. My answer is this: We have systems for that already. Absentee ballots that are requested and verified with clear identification. We are not against helping those who need assistance. We are against creating loopholes so wide that fraud can drive a truck through them. You don't build a system on exceptions. You build a system on rules, and then you make careful allowances for exceptions. If you build your system on exceptions, the system itself collapses. I want to paint the picture plainly. If we go into the 20 out of 26 midterms with mail in voting as the dominant tool, we are setting ourselves up for another round of division, suspicion, and conflict. We are preparing the soil for more lawsuits, more recounts, more investigations, more cries of fraud, and more doubt in the system. And we cannot afford that. We cannot afford another season where half the nation questions whether the results were fair. We cannot afford another round where the people lose trust in the ballot box. Because if the people no longer believe their voice counts, then they will stop using their voice. And when they stop using their voice, the very essence of democracy is dead. Now, this is not about personalities. This is not about who you like or who you dislike. This is not about red or blue. This is about the purity of the process. This is about the credibility of the system. This is about whether America will remain a place where elections mean something, where results are trusted, and where leadership is determined by the true will of the people. If we lose that, then we lose the heartbeat of the republic. We must demand reforms. We must demand clarity. We must demand integrity. That means eliminating mass mail in voting and returning to the simple, accountable process of in-person voting with proper identification, with clear verification, with transparency that all can see. That means ballots that are secure, chains of custody that are documented, and processes that are open to oversight from both sides. That means a system where no one has to wonder what happened in the dark, because everything is exposed to the light. When you study history, you will find that great nations do not fall simply because of outside enemies. They fall when their foundations are corroded from within. They fall when trust is eroded, when institutions are compromised, when systems of accountability are abandoned. And one of the surest ways to erode a nation is to erode the people's trust in their elections. Because once the people believe the system is rigged, they will either disengage in despair or erupt in disorder. Either way, the stability of the nation is lost. I am sounding the alarm today because this is not a small matter. This is not just another political talking point. This is about the future of the republic. This is about whether our children and grandchildren will inherit a system of democracy that is strong, or whether they will inherit a system that is broken. If we fail to act, if we fail to correct this, if we fail to eliminate the abuses of mail-in voting, then we are handing to the next generation a democracy riddled with holes, vulnerable to manipulation, and weaken its credibility. We cannot afford that. We must stand now. We must say with one voice that integrity matters more than convenience. that accountability matters more than accessibility, that transparency matters more than expediency. We must demand laws that eliminate mass mail in voting before the 2026 midterms. We must demand a system that is as close to foolproof as possible, because anything less is unacceptable. And let me be clear, this will not happen unless the people rise up. Politicians will not change it on their own, because too many benefit from the confusion. Leaders will not reform it on their own, because too many exploit the loopholes. The change will come when the people make it clear that they will not accept a compromise system. When the people demand a credible process. When the people speak with one voice and say, "We will not surrender our democracy to doubt and manipulation." My prayer is that we will not miss this moment. My hope is that we will awaken to the seriousness of this hour. My call is for every citizen who cares about this nation, every man and woman who believes in the integrity of democracy, to rise up and make their voice heard before it is too late. Because if we do not eliminate mail in voting now, we will reap the consequences later. And the consequences will not be light. And let me remind you, my brothers and sisters, that the issue before us is not only political, it is also moral. Because wherever truth is on trial, morality is on the line. Wherever deception can sneak into the cracks of the system, righteousness is compromised. You see, when the truth is blurred, when accountability is ignored, when loopholes are tolerated, then we are inviting darkness to reign where light should shine. And you cannot build a future on darkness. You cannot build a secure nation on deception. You cannot expect blessing on a system that tolerates corruption. The problem with mail in voting is not simply that it is convenient. It is that convenience comes at the cost of credibility. It is that convenience has opened the door for chaos. We know what happens when people are careless with what is sacred. Look back at history. Look at what happened when people treated holy things as though they were common. The Ark of the Covenant was not to be handled casually. The sacrifices in the temple were not to be offered haphazardly. Why? Because when you treat the sacred casually, you invite judgment. When you treat what is holy like it is common, you lose the presence of God. Well, when we treat the sacred act of voting like it is just another piece of mail, when we treat the sacred process of elections like it is just another form to be shuffled through the post office, then we are treating something holy as common. And when that happens, we should not be surprised when chaos follows. Now, some may scoff and say, "You are exaggerating. Mail in voting is not that serious." But do you not see that if the people's voice is not trusted, then the very idea of representative government collapses? Do you not see that if elections cannot be trusted, then leaders lose legitimacy? And when leaders lose legitimacy, the authority to govern is undermined. And when the authority to govern is undermined, rebellion brews in the streets. It may begin quietly with protests, with petitions, with raised voices. But eventually, mistrust breeds disorder. That is why it is so urgent to act now, to correct now, to eliminate what is compromising the integrity of the system now. I have heard some say, but we already survived one controversial election, we can survive another. No, my friends, we cannot keep repeating the same mistakes and think that somehow it will not cost us. You cannot build a house with cracks in the foundation and assume it will keep standing after each storm. Every storm only widens the cracks until the whole house collapses. In the same way, every election that tolerates confusion, every election that allows doubt, every election that embraces mail in loopholes is only widening the crack in the foundation. And sooner or later, if that crack is not repaired, the house will fall. And when the house falls, do not think it will only affect one party, one leader, or one ideology. When the house falls, everybody inside suffers. When the house falls, the left wing and the right wing both get crushed under the same roof. That is why this is not just a political battle. It is a battle for the survival of the whole system. That is why it is not just about who wins in 2026, but about whether there will even be a credible election in 2028 and beyond. We must stop pretending that convenience is more important than credibility. Yes, it may be easier for someone to check a box at their kitchen table and drop it in the mail. Yes, it may be more comfortable to avoid the lines at the polls. But comfort is not the measure of integrity. Easy is not the measure of trustworthy. The question is not whether it is convenient. The question is whether it is accountable. And if it is not accountable, then it is not trustworthy. Think about your own life. If you deposit money into the bank, you want that bank to be accountable, don't you? You want to know that every dollar is tracked, every transaction verified, every withdrawal documented. You would not accept a bank that said, well, to make it more convenient, we'll just let people drop off envelopes of cash in a box without receipts, without signatures, without records, and then we'll count it later. No, you would say that bank is irresponsible, that bank is dangerous, that bank cannot be trusted. Why then should we accept less when it comes to the ballots of millions of citizens? Why should we accept less accountability for something more valuable than money? Our democracy. The truth is that some people want confusion. Some people thrive in the shadows. Some people know that if the system remains unclear, they can manipulate it for their gain. That is why there is resistance to reform. That is why there is pushback against eliminating mail-in voting. Because some know that in the fog of confusion, they can get away with what they could not get away with in the clear light of accountability. That is why the people must rise up. That is why the people must demand clarity. That is why the people must insist that the system be protected. Do not be fooled by the language of compassion that cloaks itself around this issue. Compassion is not the real motive. The real motive is control. The real motive is power. The real motive is to open wide the door for manipulation. And when you understand that, you will understand why eliminating mail in voting is not just an option. It is a necessity. But let me also say this. Eliminating mail-in-voting is not enough, because if we remove one loophole but fail to guard the rest of the process, we will still be vulnerable. We need accountability at every step, from voter registration to ballot verification, from vote casting to vote counting, from tabulation to certification. We need transparency and accountability. We need identification that is verifiable, signatures that are confirmed, custody that is documented. We need processes that can withstand scrutiny, results that can stand the test of examination. We need a system that the people can believe in, because without that, democracy is an empty word. And let us not deceive ourselves into thinking that time is on our side. The 2026 midterms are not far away. The clock is ticking. The days are short. And the window for reform is closing. Every month we delay is another month wasted. Every year we postpone is another year lost. And once the election arrives, if the system is not reformed, if the loopholes are not closed, if the process is not secured, then we will reap once again the fruit of confusion. But if we act now, if we speak now, if we demand change now, then we can restore integrity to the process. Then we can go into the 2026 midterms with confidence that the voice of the people will be clear. Then we can know that the outcome, whatever it may be, is the true will of the people, not the manipulation of the process. That is why this is urgent. That is why this is non-negotiable. That is why we cannot stay silent. So I call upon every citizen to stand for integrity. I call upon leaders to rise above party loyalty and defend the credibility of the process itself. I call upon communities to organize, to petition, to press for laws that eliminate mail-in-voting and restore transparency. I call upon people of conscience not to sit back in silence, but to speak, not to accept what is corrupt, but to demand what is right, because the future of this republic depends on it. My friends, the time has come for us to recognize that if we do not secure the foundation, then nothing built on top of it will stand. You can build the most beautiful house. You can paint the walls with the finest colors. You can decorate it with the richest furniture. But if the foundation is cracked, that house is destined to fall. Mail-in-voting represents a crack in the foundation of democracy. It is not the whole problem, but it is a weak spot. And any builder would tell you a weak spot in the foundation threatens the whole structure. The future of our republic depends on whether we will patch the crack or ignore it until the collapse comes. Think of a bridge. The bridge may look strong on the surface. Cars drive across it every day. People walk across it without fear. But if beneath the surface the steel beams are rusting, if the bolts are loosening, if the concrete is eroding, then the bridge is in danger. One day, without warning, it will collapse. And when it collapses, lives will be lost, not because the surface looked weak, but because the foundation was neglected. Mail-in-voting is like rust under the bridge of democracy. On the surface, things may look fine, but beneath, there is corrosion eating away at the trust of the people. And one day, if it is not fixed, the bridge will collapse. Now there are those who would argue that fraud in mail-in voting is rare. They say, show us the evidence. Show us the numbers. But hear me well, the issue is not only whether fraud has happened, but whether fraud can happen. The issue is not just past abuse, but present vulnerability. Because any system that allows room for abuse is already a broken system. If your home security system leaves the back door unlocked, it does not matter if no one has broken in yet. The problem is that someone could. If your bank allows anyone to deposit or withdraw without verification, it does not matter if no one has stolen yet. The problem is that someone could. The possibility of corruption is enough to demand correction. We must understand that democracy is not only about outcomes, it is about trust in outcomes. The outcome of an election can only stand if the process is trusted. And the process can only be trusted if it is clear, transparent, accountable, and secure. Mail-in voting undermines all of that. It raises questions, it opens doors, it invites suspicion, and suspicion is poison to democracy. Suspicion eats away at confidence, suspicion erodes unity, suspicion breeds division. We saw this already. We saw a nation split down the middle, with millions convinced that the process was tainted. And whether you agreed or not, the reality is that half the nation did not trust the process. That is enough to tear a nation apart. Do you remember the story of the Tower of Babel? The people gathered together to build something great. They were united in purpose. They had ambition, they had vision. But when God confused their language, when their communication broke down, the project came to a halt. Division destroyed their unity. Confusion stopped their progress. That is exactly what is happening when election systems are clouded with doubt and confusion. When people cannot trust the system, they cannot unite around the outcome. And when they cannot unite around the outcome, the nation cannot move forward. We are stuck in a cycle of suspicion and conflict, unable to advance because confusion has taken the place of clarity. So I ask you, is it worth it? Is the convenience of mail in voting worth the cost of division? Is the comfort of mailing a ballot worth the collapse of trust in the process? Is a temporary ease worth the permanent erosion of democracy? My answer is no. No, because the price is too high. No, because the damage is too great. No, because the foundation is too important to compromise. Let us not deceive ourselves. If we do not act, then the 2026 midterms will be another stage for confusion, another battlefield of division, another opportunity for chaos. The lawsuits will come, the recounts will come, the accusations will come, the mistrust will grow. And each time it grows, the foundation weakens further. Each time it grows, more people disengage. Each time it grows, the system loses legitimacy. Until one day, we will wake up to discover that democracy no longer works because the people no longer believe in it. That day is coming unless we act now. We need courage, because courage is what it will take to stand against those who prefer confusion. Courage is what it will take to speak truth in a culture that tolerates deception. Courage is what it will take to reform a system that benefits too many in power. But courage is the price of freedom. If we are not willing to be courageous, then we are not willing to be free. Because freedom is never free. Freedom always costs something. And in this moment, the cost is courage. Look at history. Nations have fallen not simply because of enemies on the outside, but because of corruption on the inside. Rome was not destroyed overnight. It crumbled from within before it was conquered from without. Corruption, compromise, complacency. These are the termites that eat away at the foundation of nations. And one of the greatest forms of corruption is when the people no longer believe their leaders were chosen legitimately. Once that is lost, everything else follows. I am speaking this with urgency because the time is short. The hour is late. We do not have decades to fix this. We have months. The 2026 midterms are coming whether we are ready or not. The question is not whether the election will happen. The question is whether it will be trusted. And the trust of that election depends on what we do now. It is not enough to complain. It is not enough to grumble. It is not enough to shake our heads in frustration. We must act. We must speak. We must demand change. Because silence is complicity. If we say nothing, if we do nothing, if we simply accept the status quo, then we are agreeing to the erosion of democracy. We are consenting to the corruption of the process, and our silence will testify against us. We need reforms. We need laws that close loopholes. We need leaders who will stand for integrity. But most of all, we need the people to rise up. Because politicians respond to pressure. Leaders respond to the will of the people. If the people remain silent, nothing will change. If the people raise their voices, everything can change. The power is in the hands of the people, but only if the people use it. So rise up, citizens. Rise up, men and women of courage. Rise up, young and old. Rise up for the sake of the future. Rise up for the sake of the nation. Rise up for the sake of truth. Do not surrender to apathy. Do not bow to fear. Do not give in to despair. Stand for what is right. Demand integrity. Insist on transparency. Eliminate mail in voting before it eliminates trust in the republic. And let us remember this. We are not fighting against flesh and blood alone. This battle is not only political, it is spiritual. Because whenever truth is under attack, the enemy is at work. Whenever deception gains ground, the enemy is advancing. Whenever darkness threatens to replace light, the enemy is rejoicing. That is why this battle is not just about ballots. It is about truth. And truth is worth fighting for. Truth is worth defending. Truth is worth sacrifice. So let us put on courage like armor. Let us take up conviction like a sword. Let us march forward with determination that will not bend, with resolve that will not break. Let us speak the truth even when it is unpopular. Let us demand accountability even when it is resisted. Let us pursue integrity even when others mock it. Because the future depends on it. There will be resistance. There will be opposition. There will be those who call you names, those who dismiss your concerns, those who accuse you of fear-mongering, but stand firm, because truth does not need majority approval to remain truth. Integrity does not need popular applause to remain integrity. And righteousness does not need permission to be righteous. If we will not stand for this now, then when will we stand? If we will not defend the foundation now, then when will we defend it? If we will not act before 2026, then what makes us think the system will magically correct itself later? Problems do not solve themselves. Corruption does not fix itself. Loopholes do not close themselves. It takes people of conviction to demand reform, people of courage to insist on accountability, people of integrity to stand for what is right. And believe that such people exist in this land. I believe there are men and women, young and old, rich and poor, urban and rural, who care about this nation, who care about truth, who care about the future. I believe there are citizens who will not sit silently while democracy crumbles. I believe there are leaders who will not compromise when it comes to integrity. I believe there is a remnant willing to rise up and make a difference. So let us be that remnant. Let us be those people. Let us be the ones who will not be silent, who will not be complacent, who will not surrender. Let us be the ones who will defend democracy, who will protect integrity, who will insist on accountability. Let us be the ones who will make sure that the future is secured, not compromised, because this is bigger than 2026. This is about generations to come. This is about children not yet born. This is about grandchildren who will inherit what we leave behind. If we hand them a system that is compromised, then we will have failed them. But if we hand them a system that is secure, that is trustworthy, that is accountable, then we will have blessed them. We will have given them the gift of freedom. That is the choice before us. And the choice is urgent. The time is now. The hour is here. The question is whether we will rise to meet it. And when we talk about accountability, we must remember that accountability is not meant to restrict us. It is meant to protect us. When you put locks on your doors at night, you are not doing it to make life harder for your family. You are doing it to keep your family safe. When you buckle a seatbelt in the car, you are not doing it to make driving uncomfortable. You are doing it to protect your life. When we demand accountability in our elections, we are not doing it to make voting harder. We are doing it to protect the integrity of the vote. Accountability is a shield, not a shackle. It is a safeguard, not a punishment. Those who resist accountability are those who have something to hide, and that is why they fear the light of transparency. If we keep ignoring this issue, then we are essentially saying that our democracy is not worth protecting. We are saying that the voices of millions can be diluted, distorted, or dismissed, and that does not matter. But it does matter. Every citizen's vote matters. Every legitimate ballot must count, and every illegitimate ballot must be removed. Otherwise, the will of the people is no longer the will of the people. It is the manipulation of the process. And when the process replaces the people, democracy dies. I say again, this is not about one candidate, one party, or one personality. This is about a principle. If today it is used against one side, tomorrow it will be used against the other. If today the loopholes are exploited in one direction, tomorrow they will be exploited in another. This is not a partisan issue. It is a principle of justice, and justice must be blind to politics if it is to remain true. Justice must care only about what is right, not about who benefits. That is why this issue must be settled now, once and for all, before another generation grows up believing that elections are simply games of manipulation. We must fight not only for ourselves, but for those who come after us. We must fight not only for our own trust, but for the trust of future citizens who will inherit this system. Because if we do not protect it now, they will have nothing left to protect later. If we do not rise to the challenge today, they will be buried under the consequences tomorrow. And so the question is pressing upon us. Will we act with courage, or will we shrink back in fear? Will we defend the foundation, or will we allow it to crumble? The choice is ours, and the time is now. So the call is clear. The choice is urgent, and the responsibility is ours. We cannot pass this off to the next generation. We cannot wait for someone else to do what has been placed in our hands. We cannot remain silent while the very foundation of democracy is trembling. If the voice of the people is to be preserved, if the ballot is to remain sacred, if trust in the system is to be restored, then we must act decisively, and we must act now. Eliminating mail in voting before the 2026 midterms is not just a policy preference. It is a moral necessity, a civic duty, and a spiritual obligation. Let us rise with courage, let us stand with conviction, and let us move with urgency so that when history looks back on this moment, it will say that when the foundations were threatened, the people did not shrink back in fear, but stood tall in truth.